Good evening, Mr. President. First, let me apologize for the lighting. I really don't know how to work this tablet to make a video. I wrote you a letter. I'm sending it via video because I don't think that you have time to sit down and read my letter. So I'm going to send you this video, and I hope that you would listen to it or someone else would listen to it and tell you what it says. But I titled it, I'm Sorry. Dear Mr. President, I wrote you this letter because my heart was moved to do so. Let me begin with some details about myself. My name is Michelle Bennett. I live in Louisville, Kentucky. I'm a single mother of 2 children. The eldest is 25. The youngest is 5. I did not vote for you, Mr. President. In fact, I've grappled with the fact that I have found it hard to be supportive to your presidency. I say that because I always considered myself to be patriotic, and I would have to assume that most people in this country think that they are patriotic. I mean, this is the United States of America. This is the greatest country in the whole wide world, Mr. President. In the Bible that I read, it says that you will know my tree by the fruit it bears. During your campaign, you had a lot of hate-filled speech and things that were negative to different races that I have very good friends in. And even if I didn't have good friends that were those nationalities, Mr. President, it is my firm belief that the only thing that differs us from them is that they had the misfortune of being born on that side of the line. That's the only difference. If I'm a human and they're a human, we're all humans, that line is the only thing that divides us. And I thought it's sad that you would capitalize on the fact that there's a line that draws us. Nevertheless, I would like the opportunity to point out something that you've done that's amazing, that maybe no one gave you credit for yet. But you have single-handedly managed to unite this country in a oneness that I have not seen in my lifetime, I should say. But it's sad that you would unite them in opposition to you. You have an opportunity, Mr. President, to make your legacy be that of any other president, going down in our history books as someone that our children look up to and want to emulate and want to be like. You have the opportunity for children, our future generation, to say, I want to be like him. It's my earnest wish, Mr. President, that you would at this point in your presidency stop squandering this gift. I'm sorry that while you were at home sitting on the couch and you were screaming at the TV at former presidents and judging them all the while for the things that they were doing, I'm sorry that it never occurred to you to realize that they were in fact being presidential. There's several presidents in our history, Mr. President, that have went down scandal-free. I thought it unfair of you to speak so poorly of my beloved President Barack Obama, his family. Karma is like a boomerang, Mr. President. What you send out, you get back. Now that you're getting it back, I'm sorry that you just don't get to have an inflated ego about the whole situation. And how dare America say anything negative about you when you yourself led the way. I want to be respectful, Mr. President, because I do respect the office of the presidency. I do. I believe that it is the highest revered position that you can be in this country. And I don't write this letter as a way to talk negatively to you or be disrespectful. In fact, my heart mourns for you, Mr. President. It cannot feel good to have all of these people saying all of these negative things. It cannot feel good at all, Mr. President. I'm sorry that no one set you down as a small child and taught you the most important word that any of us will ever learn, which is no. Because it's evident that you don't understand the meaning of no. When you went in there, I'm sorry that no one pointed out the fact that the presidency is an office, Mr. President. It is not a man. You're simply the representative and the catalyst to which we would all listen to and understand that there's a president of this nation. But it is an office, in fact. You are surrounded by people who went into that office, I'm sure, and they wanted to believe in you. But the things that you're doing lately, Mr. President, are not presidential. I'm sorry that no one set you down the first day on the job and outlined what it is a president is supposed to do and what a president is not supposed to do. I'm sorry, Mr. President, but you just don't get to shape the perception of our little boys and our little girls and how they view what a president is. You're responsible, Mr. President. I'm sorry, Mr. President, but you just don't get to go on social media daily and attack people and bully them from your social media account. Our social media account, by the way. It is the POTUS account, Mr. President. It belongs to the people. You don't get to be the king of the bullies and then your wife, who is displaced in New York, say that anti-bullying is the campaign that she wants to lobby on behalf of. Because, Mr. President, it's just silly to war against the king from inside the kingdom. Speaking of your wife, Mr. President, I'd like to take this opportunity to ask you a question because I'm generally curious. Did you at any point before you swore in to be the president sit your wife down and explain to her that she's also accountable to this nation? It's grossly inappropriate that your wife would live in a whole different state and now we've got to change the way that we do things. It's inappropriate. It doesn't look right. That's just a sad note. I'm sorry, Mr. President, but it is grossly inappropriate that you would attack the media. And the reason I say that, not because they're right. I believe that a lot of times there is biased media. There is. We have to deal with biased media because we are a free-thinking society, Mr. President. It's a wonderful thing if I disagree with you and you disagree with me, and at the end of it, we can come together and reach a consensus. That's a wonderful thing. But, Mr. President, it's not fair for you to have had your son-in-law call CNN and, from what I understand, give a list of reporters that you don't like directly. It's just not fair. And by the way, it's not presidential. But it's not fair because I understand that you inherited your wealth. Whereas I'm sure that the media reporters, probably most of them, worked very hard to get where they are. And they have families. It's not fair for you to take their career and their family's livelihood because they said something that you didn't like. Because at the end of the day, Mr. President, haven't you ever heard of sticks and stones? I'm sorry, Mr. President, but once you raised your hand and swore in, you traded what's best for Donald for what's best for this nation. We don't have to care about you to hold an expectation that you'll do the best job that you can in the highest office in our land. That's the truth, Mr. President. I'm sorry, Mr. President, but it's not fair for you to make our nation's children watch you squander this blessing that you have. They're looking to you, Mr. President, for their future. A future, by the way, that I sincerely hope, even though I didn't vote for you, I hope that in history books you're favorably looked upon instead of all these scandal after scandal after scandal after scandal. It's distracting. And I'd like to segue in here, Mr. President, that I'm a conspiracy theorist all day long. Any one of my friends will tell you. I'm a conspiracy theorist, and it makes me wonder what it is that we're not seeing because of all these distractions that we are. It's a waste of time, Mr. President. Please rise above that. I'm sorry, Mr. President, that you haven't taken time out to realize that our economy, we just can't afford this travel budget if it keeps on the way it is. Political analysts have estimated that you spend 11.3 million, somewhere in that range. That means that in 4 years, the American public will have spent over $500 million just on travel expenses. And since you won't turn over your tax returns from previous to the presidency, I'm certain that you'll feel you're justified not to turn it in while you're the president. The best dictator of future behavior is looking at past behavior. And so I'm just wondering, do you have a really good solution for how our economy is supposed to shoulder the burden of this travel expense? I'd like to ask you a silly question, Mr. President. I say it's silly because I would think at this point that you have a fixed position on this, and it's obviously it's rhetoric. But I just wonder, why did you want to be the president? Because I believe from talking to friends and colleagues and people that I don't know, that you did it for the power of it. You did it for the win. But Mr. President, it's not fair that you're dragging us all down with you. The fish rots at the head, Mr. President. It does. It starts with you, and it'll end with you. The question is, at the end of your presidency, will you be a president that we can be proud we put 4 years into? Will you, at the end of your presidency, make us love the next person so much that we forget all about you? I hope not. You have children, Mr. President. You will die. Everybody dies. I'm going to die. You're going to die. We're all going to die. And you will hopefully have future generations of children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, people that you might never meet. Don't you want them to favorably look at you? Don't you want them to be proud to bear the Trump name? I hope so, Mr. President. I have some advice that you probably don't want at this point, but I hope you listen to. Whether you ever admit it or not, you're way in over your head. There is not enough space for your ego to reside with the humility that you should have at this point. You are surrounded by people who are giving you just enough rope to hang yourself. Hold just a moment, Mr. President. My little baby's probably being dropped off outside. So I'm going to have to resume this conversation in a moment, if that's the case. I'm sorry. She's pretty important. Okay. That means I'm going to have to finish this up pretty quickly. I would like to encourage you to read the 25th Amendment, Mr. President. When and if they decide they've just simply had enough of your childish angst, your egocentric ways, your lashing out on people, when they're tired, someone can come in and just remove you from that office, Mr. President. I would hate to see that, but it can happen. So please take time to read up on all of the politics. Just read up on them. Don't trust someone else. Read these politics, Mr. President. They are from the forefathers of our nation. It's factual. It's not made up. It's there, and it can happen to you if you're not careful. Mr. President, please understand that the people of the United States did not approve a second White House. We just didn't. We only have one White House. That's it. It's not fair for you to make us pay for you to constantly go to your vacationing spot and then call it the second White House. All of us understand the difference between peeing on our leg and raining, Mr. President.